The day I hit 100,000 followers, I was sitting alone on the bathroom floor. My phone was still in my hand, the screen glowing with likes and hearts. People from around the world were congratulating me. Some wrote things like, "You're my inspiration," or "Wish I had your life." I liked the comments. I even replied to some, but my eyes stayed dry. My hands were cold, and all I could think was, none of them really know me. I started my account 2 years ago. It began with food photos, little videos of me cooking in my small kitchen. I posted every day, even when I was tired. At first, only a few people watched, but slowly, it grew. I learned how to write the right captions, how to make each photo look perfect. I shared healthy meals, bright smiles, and motivational quotes. I always said things like, "Be yourself," and "Happiness is a choice." People believed I was full of joy. They believed I was confident. I believed it too, for a while. But behind the screen, I was different. I lived in a small apartment that felt too quiet. I worked part-time at a clothing store and came home each day with aching feet. My parents lived in another city, and I rarely saw them. I had no one to talk to at night, so I posted instead. The likes became a kind of company. The comments were noise in a silent world. I felt needed when people asked me for advice, even if I had no real answers. Some nights I would stare at my phone for hours. I checked my face in the camera before posting a story. I looked at the angle of my nose, the shape of my eyes. I used filters, of course. Everyone did. I told myself it was normal. But over time, I couldn't recognize my real face. Without makeup or lighting, I looked tired, older, smaller. I started to avoid mirrors in the morning. One day, a girl sent me a message. She said, "You changed my life." She had been struggling with food and body image, and she said my videos helped her feel stronger. I smiled when I read it. I wanted to believe I was helping people, but I also knew I had skipped dinner the night before. My clothes were getting loose, and I often felt dizzy. Still, I posted my smoothie bowl with a big smile and wrote, "Fuel your body with love." People loved that post. It got more likes than anything before. I started doing live videos too. I would talk about morning routines, confidence tips, and positive thinking. I practiced my smile in the mirror before going live. I made notes about what to say, which stories to tell. I told my followers they could be anything they wanted. I said, "Look at me. If I can do it, so can you." But I didn't believe that anymore. I was tired all the time. My sleep was broken. I had dark thoughts, but I never shared those. My best friend from university used to call me every few weeks. Her name was Ria. She was kind, honest, and always made me laugh. But after I became busy with my page, I stopped replying to her. I told her I was building something important. She said she understood. She said, "Just don't lose yourself in it." I laughed and said, "I know what I'm doing." But now, I don't think I did. On weekends, I filmed new content. I moved the furniture to get better lighting. I stood in front of my white wall with a fake plant beside me. It looked perfect on camera. No one saw the mess outside the frame, the laundry on the couch, the empty takeout boxes, the dusty corners. No one knew I cried in that room sometimes. I once dropped my phone while filming and sat down and cried for an hour. I never posted that part. Then something strange happened. I started to feel scared of real people. I avoided my coworkers. I stopped going out with friends. I told them I was too busy, too focused. The truth was, I didn't know how to talk to people anymore without performing. Online, I was always in control. In real life, I felt small. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know who I was when no one was watching. I started waking up early, sometimes at 4 a.m., just to check my phone. If a post didn't do well, I felt like a failure. I looked at other creators and felt jealous. They were younger, prettier, more successful. I started copying their ideas without meaning to. I wanted to keep up. I wanted to stay visible. I feared disappearing. I feared becoming nothing. One day, I made a video called A Day in My Life. I filmed myself making tea, stretching, working, smiling, cleaning, and reading. The video was soft and peaceful. It got over 1 million views. But that day, I had not spoken a single word to another human being. My voice felt strange when I finally said something out loud that evening. I remember whispering to myself, "Is this what connection feels like?" Sometimes I wondered what would happen if I stopped posting. Would anyone notice? Would they move on to the next person with a prettier face or better content? I knew the answer. Online love is soft and fast, warm in the moment, gone the next day. Real love, I thought, must feel different. But I couldn't remember what real love felt like. My mental health started to slip. I felt panic sometimes when my phone battery dropped. I got headaches. I started having dreams where I was speaking to a crowd but no one listened. I once dreamed I was falling through a screen, like my body was pixelated, disappearing bit by bit. I woke up shaking, holding my phone like it was my last connection to the world. And then, that day on the bathroom floor came. The post that made me famous, the one with the 100,000 likes, was a photo of me smiling in front of a sunset. I had taken it weeks earlier. That evening, I had been lonely and went to the park just to feel outside air. I had asked a stranger to take my photo. I didn't speak to him after that. He smiled politely and left. I sat on the bench for another hour, watching the sky change color. My phone battery died. No one texted me. No one was waiting at home. But online, that sunset photo became something magical. People said things like, "You look so peaceful," or "I want a life like this." I replied to a few, said thank you, and smiled at the screen. And then I sat down on the bathroom floor and cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet, tired tears. The kind of crying that happens when your body is too tired to lie anymore. I stayed there for a long time. My phone buzzed with more likes. I didn't look. I felt like something inside me had cracked open. Not broken, just exposed. That night I didn't post again. I turned off the phone. I sat on the floor until my legs felt numb. I remembered a song my mother used to sing when I was little. I sang it quietly to myself. My voice was rusty, dry, unused. But it felt real. And for the first time in months, I felt something real too. Before I share the rest of my story, could you please tell me where you're from? It gives me strength to know there's someone out there who listens to me, who understands me. It means a lot to me. The morning after, I didn't open my app. My phone sat on the desk while I made tea in silence. For the first time in months, I didn't film it. I didn't arrange the mug for a perfect picture. I didn't hold my breath, trying to smile for strangers. I simply drank the tea. It tasted warm and soft. It was a small thing, but it felt like mine. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall. My heart was beating slower than usual. I felt tired, but not empty. For months, I had chased attention. I wanted to be seen, to be praised. But that day, I wanted quiet. I wanted to feel like a real person again. Later that morning, I went for a walk. I left my phone at home, which felt strange at first. My hands kept reaching for it out of habit. But the further I walked, the lighter I felt. I passed a bakery and smelled fresh bread. I heard a child laughing in the distance. I looked at the sky, not through a lens, but with my own eyes. I sat in the park and watched the leaves move in the wind. There was no one beside me, but I didn't feel completely alone. For the first time, I started to understand the difference between being alone and being lonely. One was quiet. The other was pain. That week, I didn't post anything. My inbox was full of messages. People asked, "Are you okay?" Some wrote, "Come back, we miss you." A few sent angry notes, thinking I had left them without warning. I read them all, but I didn't answer. I needed space from that world. I needed to remember who I was before the numbers. I cleaned my apartment. I took down the fake plant and folded the filming lights. I opened the windows and let the cold air in. I found my old sketchbook under the bed. I had forgotten I used to draw. Before all this, I loved quiet hobbies. Things that didn't need an audience. I sat down with a pencil and began to draw again. My hand felt unsure at first, but after a while, the lines became smoother. The drawing wasn't perfect, but it was real. At work, I started talking to people again. I asked one of my coworkers about her weekend. She looked surprised, then smiled. We laughed about something small, and I felt something shift. It was a soft moment, not dramatic, but it reminded me that real connection still existed. It just took time. I thought about Ria, my old friend. We hadn't spoken in months. I had ignored her last few texts. I didn't deserve her kindness, I thought. But one night, I opened our chat and typed, "Hey, I miss you. I was lost for a while, but I'm trying to find myself again." I didn't expect a reply right away, but she answered the next morning. "I'm glad you're okay," she wrote. "Let's talk when you're ready." I cried a little when I read that. Not from sadness, but from relief. One evening, I opened the app again. I didn't post. I just looked. I saw people living perfect lives, or at least pretending to. I knew how much of it was real and how much was performance. I felt a strange mix of love and distance. These were the people who had followed me through my carefully built version of happiness. They meant something, and yet they didn't know me at all. I posted one quiet photo, a cup of tea on a wooden table. No filters, no caption. Just the moment. Some people liked it. Some asked if I was okay. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure how to explain what I felt. More days passed. I slept better. I started cooking meals without filming them. I called my parents and talked about simple things. My mother told me she had started knitting again. My father asked if I had eaten well. They sounded closer than before. I realized I had pushed them away too, chasing strangers' attention instead of family care. One Saturday, I went to a bookstore. I hadn't been in one for years. I walked through the aisles, touching the covers, flipping through pages. A girl stood next to me in the poetry section. She looked at me and smiled. "I follow you," she said softly. "You're the healthy food girl, right?" I froze. I hadn't heard that in a while. I nodded. "I used to be," I said. She smiled again. "Your videos helped me during lockdown. Just wanted to say thank you." Then she walked away. I stood there for a long time. I wasn't angry or embarrassed. I was just thoughtful. Maybe my work had helped someone. Maybe that was enough. But I also knew I didn't want to go back to that version of me. The version who smiled for everyone, but felt hollow inside. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. I started to write. Not a post, not a caption, just thoughts. I wrote about how I had built a perfect online world, but forgotten to build a real life. I wrote about fear, silence, and the strange feeling of being known by many but understood by none. I wrote for hours. The words came easily. My hands moved fast, and my heart felt lighter. When I stopped, it was past midnight. I looked at the screen, full of my true voice. I saved the file and turned off the light. In the weeks that followed, I wrote more. I didn't share it online. I wrote for myself. I walked more. I ate better. I smiled at strangers, not for likes, but because I wanted to. I spoke to Ria again. We met at a cafe one afternoon. She hugged me for a long time. We talked for hours, and I laughed more than I had in months. She looked at me and said, "You're here again. The real you." I nodded. I felt it too. One night I posted a photo of a sketch I had drawn. I wrote, "Not perfect, but honest." The comments were different this time. More quiet. More kind. A few people said, "I relate to this." One wrote, "I'm tired of pretending too." I replied to those messages, slowly, carefully, like a person, not a brand. I still had followers, but fewer than before. Some left when I stopped being the perfect girl. That was okay. I didn't need all of them. I only needed real ones. There was still loneliness sometimes. There were still quiet nights and heavy thoughts, but they felt less sharp now. I was building something slower, a life that didn't need likes to feel real. I wasn't completely healed, but I was beginning. One evening, I stood on my balcony and watched the sunset. I didn't take a photo. I didn't post about it. I just stood there, letting the colors wash over me. The wind touched my face, and I smiled. It was the kind of smile that no one else could see, and that was enough. It had been 3 months since I stopped living through the screen. My days were different now. I woke up without reaching for my phone. I made tea and sat by the window. Sometimes I watched the street. Other times, I wrote in my notebook. There was no pressure to share it. No comments to wait for. The quiet felt strange at first. But with time, it started to feel safe. I still posted sometimes. A photo of a tree I liked. A drawing. A few words. I didn't care about the likes anymore. I turned off notifications. I no longer needed strangers to tell me I was enough. I was learning how to say that to myself. One morning, I received a message from a woman named Lena. She said she had followed me for years. She noticed my change. Fewer filters, more honesty. She said, "Thank you for not pretending." I didn't know how much I needed that. I read her words twice. Then I wrote back. I didn't know how much I needed it either. It reminded me of how many people feel alone in a world full of voices. Sometimes the loudest noise is silence, when no one really hears you. That used to be my life, and in many ways, I was still learning how to live without hiding. I took a new job at a local art studio. It didn't pay much, but I loved it. I helped set up workshops and cleaned brushes. I talked to people who liked color and light. I spent hours with children who painted without fear. One little girl said, "Look, I made a rainbow, even though I was sad today." I smiled and said, "That's the best kind of rainbow." One afternoon, after work, I sat in the park with a book. A man asked if he could share the bench. I nodded. He didn't say anything else. We just sat there, listening to the leaves move. I didn't take a photo. I didn't post about it. But later that night, I wrote about the moment in my journal. That small silence felt like connection. A kind I never found online. A few weeks later, Ria invited me to a small dinner. There were only 5 people. I almost said no. Crowds still made me nervous. I was used to being alone, but something inside me said, try. So I went. The room was warm and the lights were soft. People laughed, shared food, and told stories. No one asked for photos. No one talked about followers. When I said I used to be a content creator, someone asked, "Do you miss it?" I paused. Then I said, "No, not really. I miss parts of it, but not who I became." After dinner, Ria walked me home. We talked about the old days, about university, bad dates, and silly mistakes. She stopped near my door and looked at me. "You're different now," she said, "but in a good way." I nodded. "I feel more like myself." She smiled and hugged me. That night, I sat at my desk and looked at my old content. I opened some of my first posts, the ones with food and soft music. I remembered how excited I had been, how proud I was of each small win. I wasn't angry at that version of me. She had tried her best. She wanted to be loved. But now, I wanted more than attention. I wanted truth. I deleted a few old posts, not out of shame, but because they no longer felt like me. I kept others, reminders of the girl I had been. She was still part of my story, but she wasn't the whole story. As spring came, I started walking without a plan. I visited small cafes, bookstores, and gardens. I talked to strangers more often. I laughed louder. I even signed up for a painting class. On the first day, the teacher asked us to paint how we felt. I painted a window with the sun coming through. It was simple, soft, and full of light. The teacher looked at it and said, "Peaceful." I smiled. That was exactly how I felt. One day, I got a message from a brand. They wanted to work with me again. They offered money and promotion. It was tempting, but I looked at the message for a long time and never replied. I didn't want to go back. Not to that fast, shiny world. I wanted slow things, honest things, real things. Sometimes I still felt lonely. Not often, but sometimes I missed deep connection. I missed long talks at night. I missed someone knowing my heart without explanation. But I also knew that I wasn't hiding anymore. Whoever came next into my life would meet the real me, not the version made for a screen. One quiet evening, I got a text from Ria. "You inspired me to delete my fake smile post today." I replied, "Good. The real you is so much better." In that moment, I realized something. Sharing my life online hadn't been the problem. The problem was hiding my truth, pretending, performing. I wasn't going to stop creating, but I would do it differently now. No filters, no lies, just me. In progress, in pieces, but real. That night, I posted again. Not a photo, not a video, just a few words. I'm still here, not perfect, but finally honest. Some people liked it, some didn't. But I slept well that night, and that was enough. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Like and comment if you want to hear more soon.